We're going to make another pass through the drawing to do a little cleanup. And to start off with, I'm going to reposition some of these arrows. So whenever I can grab a handle, we'll drag it a little closer to the other pin. That cleans up a little bit. The 6, I'm not sure that there's anything I can really do with it, so maybe it becomes the one flyaway. It's going to be kind of visually out on its own there, so could probably have brought the 4 with it, but we'll see how it works. All right, so I thought I had everything in 3 decimal places, but when I switched millimeters, grams, and seconds, or probably when I did the drafting standard, is when it changed the units. So right now it's still showing in 3 decimal places. So let's go inch, pounds, and seconds, and hit OK. And it still didn't update. So occasionally, well, I'm still in millimeters, grams, and seconds. So see if that'll come back. So occasionally there's this weird, you have to change it and then change it back. And I'm not really sure what's going on there, but I've noticed that depending on the template, that sometimes it doesn't carry over. All right, so that gives us enough to start with. So I'm just going to go through and do a real quick look. So sheet 3, we had the steps and the pins, and then got a little carried away with the diameters there. So I have to decide: do I want to stay with the hole call out? Kind of like the through. So come over and modify that one to a 2 times. We ended the video on the last video on this one, and I went ahead and did pretty much the same thing to the other. So to be consistent, make sure. All right, so it's it's pretty difficult to get a perfect print on the first pass through. There's always a second or a third pass that is going to take you into that next level. So, and one more hole call out, and one more 2 times. So the downside to the 2 times, if this were an actual hole wizard item, it would give us an instance count, and it would put in the 2 for us. The problem is going to be that if for some reason we put in a third, that this is going to have to be manually updated, just like the radiuses are going to be manually updated. All right, so that requires, we're going to lose the associativity. It requires that we go back and manually change those. All right, so some things I'd like to add. If you have not turned on your layers, then we can right-click, and there is a layer box, and it may put that that toolbar anywhere. I have mine set with the filters, and then locked into position. If it throws it somewhere weird, remember that you can go into Customize, unlock, so uncheck the Lock Command Manager and Toolbars, reposition it. Once you have the handles, you can reposition it somewhere a little more familiar or wherever you're comfortable with. And then, just so it doesn't accidentally move, we're going to lock them back. Okay, so with layers, these are things that we're going to start building into our template. We're going to look at units and the standards, and go through the process of deciding what it is that we would like to have built in. So one of those things can be the layers. And so if I do a dims layer, we'll see if I can pick out my favorite color for dimensions. And then I'm going to create one for center. And centers I like to have kind of bright in the magenta. All right, so very visible. And those give me a couple to start with. And when I activate, so I can come over here and window pick, and window pick. And on the parameters on the left, we're going to be able to pick the layer for that selection. So that puts in. Pretty much can do the same thing with the bill of materials table, and it gives it just a little bit of contrast, maybe not so kind of fading into the background there. Alright, so we have a lot of dimensions. This is where the filters can come in. If you do not have your filters on, you can hit F5 on the keyboard. There's also, a view? I'm going to have to look for that one. I know there's a way to get to it, but I've always hit F5, so don't think about it. Alright, so I'm going to filter dimensions and hole callouts. And when we pick, then the filter should be the only thing, or the dimensions should be the only thing that pops up. And if we go over to leaders, no link, then we get to the layer. So we set that to dims, accept, and that cleans it up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and run through all of the sheets while that filter is on. And I can also come back to the layer toolbar and it will have the same effect. And we can update and get those to look a little cleaner. Alright, so a couple more. And one more. Alright, so since we're in this group, I'll go ahead and turn off the dims so that I can select something else. Let's see, do we have, we do have a filter for center marks. I don't have any center lines, but center lines should also be in that group. And I'm going to set those to center. And we'll just go through real quick and see if I can pick all of those up. So that one only has the one. And maybe we'll go back and we'll add a center line on those just so that we can see the process. Okay. And then pretty much the same thing. Alright, those are looking good. Alright, so if I wanted to add a center line, again I gotta turn off my filter. We're going to set center as the current layer, and if I pick center line, I should be able to pick two objects, and that gives me the start, and then that will set my center line through the cylinder. I'm going to go back the other way. Alright, and then if I pre-select, holding down the control button, that should have the same effect. And if I pick the face, nope, I didn't like the face. Sometimes it will get it. So, alright, so that gives me a little more contrast in the geometry. Hopefully makes it a little more readable. Okay, so our next, we'll probably only take one or two of these and look at the full dimensioning on it. All right, so we set everything to 3 decimal places, which industry standard in inch is going to be plus or minus 5 thousandths on our tolerance, meaning that this can grow to 6.304 to 6.294. All right, gives us a range. I'd like to make that a little bit more open. So if I go to 2 decimal places, depending on again the industry, it could be 10 thousandths, could be 15 thousandths. 15 thousandths pretty close to half a millimeter. So we're looking at making that a little bit more wide open. And 6" 300 does a pretty good job. The hole locations, however, are going to be a little more critical. So we'll leave those at plus or minus 5. And we would go in to a little tighter tolerance or start looking at a geometric tolerance if that was really critical. Alright, so looking at the critical dimensions, one side of the pin is going to go into the base. The other side is going to go into the crank. And so one of these needs to be a press fit to kind of pick the side that's going to be stationary, and the other side needs to have a looser fit. So when we start doing tolerance analysis, we're going to be looking at limit dimensions. So being able to modify and go through these dimensions, a little advanced, but we're going to put some basic dimensions on it. And I'm not going to, well, I probably shouldn't use basic because of, but let's make it a limit dimension of minus 5 thousandths. So this is not including any clearance, any calculated clearance, but it does give me the start of the geometry to say, yeah, these have some dimensions in them. So for this 394, if this is the press side, actually, I think I went the wrong way on that one. Alright, so we need to tighten that tolerance up. I was talking and not paying attention to what I was doing. So 394, and actually if we made this one, well, we need to look at the hole sizes and refer to one of the charts. So let's make it a 393 to 394 would go into a press. So yeah, 001. Alright, make it 1,000th. There we go. So a lot tighter tolerance, which means we have to do a greater process. And that also means that I probably want to bring this out to 4 decimal places to really call it out that, hey, there's something critical going on there. And on this one, we want to make it a little bit bigger. So its limit dimension, let's just say we'll go 1,000th bigger. A 2,000th breadth, if both of these got to their maximum material conditions, which is a term we're going to discuss at length a little bit later. But as big as it can get or as small as the hole can get, then I would have 2,000ths of press, which is quite heavy. Right, on the other side where it's going to clear, then we reverse that logic, that geometry, and say this becomes our minus. And we don't want it to be too loose, so we'll stay with 1,000th. And maybe when I go back through and do a little more tolerance analysis, we can open those up. Oh, so that actually comes over to the other sheet. Oh, and this is the one that goes through, so I reversed those. Alright, so one of those was crank, actually. One of those was the crank, so we will we'll catch up with that one. Alright, so the 10 millimeter side is the one that's going to press into our geometry. And I'm missing my decimal point. I keep missing that for some reason. Okay. And 4 decimals. And then okay, so 393 and also 4 decimals. Alright, so from the base to the pin, so probably should adjust that that order. Alright, so we're seeing one size up, one size down, and then catching my mistake, the one that I'm going to be looking at next is this one needs to be a clearance, so it's going to get a little bit larger, while the pin got a little bit smaller and provide more movement. So we're going to need to go through rest of the documents, the sheets to catch up to those. All right, that gives you an idea of some basic tolerancing. Not really focused on the tolerancing, just want to give you an idea of some of the things that we're going to go through to clean up and perform these functions in the drawing.